The African View. I love this one, and this is where we bring in our guests to debate a particular contentious issue on the continent and across the world. Today we're looking at whether or not schools overvalue certificates and undervalue talent. On one side, we'll explore the view that traditional exams may fail to recognize creativity, leadership, and real-world skills. And on the other side, we're considering the argument that certificates remain essential for fairness, structure, and opportunity. Today, hashing it out on The View is Hendrick Makaneta, who's an education activist, as well as Kgomotso Moalosi, who is a neurodiversity activist. Thank you to both of you for joining us in today's Africa View debate. I'm going to start with you, Kgomotso. Let's hear your opening statements on the topic of the day. Do schools overvalue certificates and undervalue talent? Good morning.
Good morning, Palisa and everybody on the call. This one is a very tricky one. You know, when I read the argument, there's bits of truth in both, but I'm going to lean on mine. I do believe, whether it's due to pressure or whatever, the valuing on certificates doesn't even take into account the quality of that certificate. So sometimes you may find learners or students who have other talents that may not necessarily be explored or brought about in an academic space, then you let them through the cracks. And I'm also a very big believer that in nurturing of talents, one of the things that you're able to bring through is a sense of community and perseverance and understanding the greater good. It also is very helpful in building a bit more of a growth mindset where one can not be stagnant in one way, but be able to see the broader view. And like I said, just to wrap that up, it will never be one. Certificates have got their value, but they are dependent on other things. Students need a holistic education in order to be effective. And people who contribute to society as a whole.
All right. Let's come to you, Hendrick. Good morning to you as well. Let's hear your opening statements on this particular debate. Where do you stand?
Well, quite honestly, I think that the manner in which our education system is designed, obviously it corresponds to what is happening in the entire world, where learners have to, you know, in one way or the other, you know, they have to receive some form of, you know, assessments, which ultimately will lead to a certificate in terms of our national qualification framework. Obviously, if you look at the South Africa in basic education, we have Umalosi, which has to do quality checks to make sure that if you say that a student is ready to proceed into a university, some form of checks and balances have to be made through assessments, and of course, at the end of the day, a certificate has to be issued to say that this student or this learner has been able to comply with all the requirements of a particular grade. And it's not only happening in the basic education sector. Even in the education space, you have structures such as the chair, you know, the Council on Higher Education, which has got a responsibility to do quality checks for universities to make sure that if a university is offering a particular degree, you know, they should be able to meet certain requirements. And once students have complied with all the requirements of that particular degree, be it an LLB degree or an engineering degree, you know, it has to be checked, you know, moderations have to be done so that we can safely say that the student is qualified. Imagine if, you know, certificates were not given or if people were not taken through these processes. We can't just rely on talent alone. You can't say this person is good, we know he can heal people. But you have to actually have these doctors go through, you know, tests thoroughly, where at the end of the day we can be able to safely say this doctor is ready to be able to work with the patients. He is skilled in a particular stream, and therefore the certificate must be issued by the relevant institution. So that is where I come in to say we have to defend this practice, because it is a long-standing practice which involves experts, especially in the particular field where learners or students have to be assessed from time to time. The only way in which we can safely say that these students are ready is through certificates which are not only issued out, but they're also, looked after by the bodies such as the Council on Higher Education or the Umalusi in the case of the National Senior Certificate.
All right, Kgomotso, I'm bringing the ball back in your court. I mean, Hendrick is speaking about compliance, basic requirements, where everyone is tested according to those requirements. And that certificate says, yeah, we know for certain that this person can do a particular thing. What do you say to that? I mean, it's one thing to have compliance and basic requirements. Are you saying that this overlooks how we learn, who we are, and our various skills and talents as individuals?
I'm saying that we need to find balance. There needs to be a balance in between so that we are not just churning out just the certificated. And I love the fact that he spoke about our current reality, that we have taken a bias towards this approach. But in taking that bias, we have poured out something from the bathwater, like, for example, personality aptitude test, which could also be helpful. To get a better sense of what is happening, because one of the things we must ask ourselves is, if we have been taking this approach and certificates are the way that we've been going, what are we getting on the back end of this? Is it translating in what happens in our society, what we need economically in our labor market, etc.? So I think the gist of my argument is based on we need to go further than compliance. We need those elements of organic intelligence coming through with some sort of measure. So I think the measure that we do right now is it's almost a bit of a tick box, and that's why earlier I mentioned the issue of what is the quality of the certificate. Because Umalusi that had certificates of the LLB degree that was the original 4 year that you had to do the B-News or the B-Talk before you went into it. How is this certificate still holding up against the current, where sometimes it seems that some of these qualifications, in the pursuit of having more certificates, have actually been watered down in quality? That's my position.
All right, we're going to take a break. I love how we started it off, and we're going to continue the debate after this break. Where do you stand in this one? Do you stand on the side of natural talents and skills having to shine through in various industries, or is that certificate enough to show that you have met the requirements of that particular work that you're going to do? Let us know where you stand on this one. It's the African View, +2783 288 6684. Yeah, it continues after the break, so stay.
Across Africa, communities rise with the promise of clean water and clean sanitation. The African Union's 2026 theme calls us to action.
It's about mobilizing real commitments, securing climate-resilient water and sanitation projects, and ensuring that water becomes a driver of sustainable development and prosperity across the continent.
A landmark moment, not only for Africa, but for the global movement for access to safe water for all.
Assuring sustainable water availability for every home, every village, every nation. This is the Africa we want.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
On the move, weekdays, 9 a.m. to midday. Only on Channel Africa. #On the move.
Do schools overvalue certificates and undervalue talent? That is the African View debate we're having this morning with Hendrick Makaneta, an education activist, and Kgomotso Moalosi, who's a neurodiversity activist. We heard Kgomotso's second statement just before the break. I'm going to come to you, Hendrick, because Kgomotso said something really interesting, that it feels like we're just churning out people who have certification. And if I, Palesa, am particularly good with memorizing things and writing tests, it might not particularly mean that I'm the best person for a particular job or role. And, you know, Kgomotso is saying there is no practical element for us to know whether this person with certification actually is better than someone else who might have, more talent and more skill towards this thing. Maybe they're just good at memorizing and writing tests. And it seems like the education system, that's what it's preparing us for. Memorizing, writing tests, passing and receiving the certificate. Oh, is that Hendrick that we've just lost on the line? Hendrick, are you there? Okay, I think we've just lost Hendrick on the line. We'll come back to you, Kgomotso. Are you still there?
I'm still.
Okay. So, Kgomotso, you're still here. I'm going to come back to you because, we need to really figure out where this stands. But I really do want Hendrick's response to this particular question. Okay, let's take a break, get Hendrick back on the line, and then we will come back to engage further in this. So, and don't forget, this is not just a debate between Hendrick and Kgomotso on the line here on air, but it's also a debate between you at home, +2783 288 6684. What are your thoughts on this one?
The whole population of Africa has been shocked to the depth of its soul.
For 60 years, Channel Africa has been the voice that connects the continent, telling our stories and sharing our vision with the world. This year, we mark 6 decades of broadcast excellence.
60 years of stories, sound, and connection.
6 years of African conversations that matter.
This is 60 years of broadcast excellence.
Broadcast excellence. Rooted in Africa's heartbeat and looking boldly into the future. Join Channel Africa as we celebrate 60 years of broadcasting. Still strong, still vibrant, and still giving you the African perspective.
Channel Africa.
#On the move and connect with us.
Okay, we have Hendrick back on the line as we continue our debate. I'm not sure if you heard my previous question. I'll just repeat that for you, Hendrick. I'm saying, in fact, Kgomotso is saying essentially that it feels like we're just churning out people with certificates, especially right now in a highly competitive market. There's a lot of unemployment. And if I am particularly good with memorizing and writing tests, it's going to be easy for me to have a certificate, but it doesn't particularly mean that I'm the best person for that job or that role. What do you say to this?
Yes, quite honestly, there may be instances where people, generally become certificated and not necessarily knowledgeable. It is for this reason that, if you look at different professions, there are bodies which oversee the profession itself. If you look at the health profession, you'll have your HPCSA. In the teaching fraternity, you'll have the South African Council for Educators, in the medical field, and so on. Even in law, you'll have your LPC, the Legal Practice Council, which regulates the profession itself. And usually, people who have been memorizing and are not necessarily knowledgeable or they are just certificated, these bodies will be able to, in one way or the other, deal with them in practice. We have seen many cases where lawyers or some of the lawyers have been struck off the roll because, they've not been able to comply with what needs to be done. Of course, it does not mean that it's everybody who receives certificate and not necessarily knowledgeable. There may be even those who are highly knowledgeable, but in one way or the other, they are not able to, they are found wanting by these bodies.
Yeah.
So in the case of higher education, I think that the Council on Higher Education should be able to subject our graduates to some form of assessments as well, even beyond a degree, to make sure that if a graduate says, I'm ready to do this, yes, they can be able to do it. But even members of the public are luckily in the legal fraternity is happening a lot. Members of the public are able to report cases where legal practitioners, have not done what they promised to do when they left the institutions of higher learning. The same goes for doctors as well. There are bodies which are able to regulate such conduct. But we should worry. Yes, we should be worried about those who just memorize and pass. But in most cases, it's not as simple as that. People are taken through, board exams as well in the case of the legal fraternity, where, it is not just easy to memorize and just pass. There are procedures, especially when it comes to professions, such as the legal profession, as well as the medical professions. I think that doctors as well are taken through, they can't just come and say, we are here. We just have certificate. We don't know what to do. We're not knowledgeable. It is very rare to find such cases.
I'm actually wondering, Hendrick, if it wouldn't save us sort of years of money and malpractice if there were ways to evaluate that talent and that skill beforehand. And you did say actually that, because we're not all going to become lawyers and doctors, of course, and there's so many other professions, especially in this day and age. Bringing back to you, Kgomotso, he did mention, Hendrick, that maybe there should be ways, especially in higher education, to show practical skill. It sounds a little bit like he was on your side there. What do you say to that? How do you also on your side, if we should be looking at, skills and talent, how do you collate that, in the normal world for people to go out there into the job world or, working with people? So we know if you don't have a certificate, how are we going to know that you actually are, better at doing this, or you actually can do a particular thing?
I think Hendrick and I are together on something, because I would agree that some level of certification is required, not just the talent, but it cannot also just be just the certification. So I love the fact that he spoke to regulating bodies, and you also then helped with bringing in the practicality. And as you were talking, I was thinking of one of the most obvious examples we have about this thing of sometimes going one route to the detriment of the other. And you look at what happened when, as a government, we moved from teacher colleges to teachers just going to university. And then you see the impact on how it plays out at schools, because you have somebody who has a certificate that says, I have done education, but they lack that practicality of what you would do in a college, which is to be in classes, and somebody could then write back to be like, you know what, I think you are a better place for foundation. And that's how talent would come through, with having a bit of a practical thing. And sometimes when we go with one route, we lose something. But regulation bodies are also very important if we can manage to get the politics out of them. I think Baba was saying, like, we are balancing on one leg sometimes because you're trying not to offend the other part. I think it would be dangerous to say to any young people that just by virtue of, Kgomotso, you're humorous, you have a great future ahead of you, you can just speak to anybody.
Yeah.
Some level of regulation is needed. But we also cannot just go on giving the certificate without creating spaces. And this is the last one, Palisa, and this is where a lot of the difference you see between our schooling systems. Sometimes when you're talking private schools or independent or smaller schools, you're not just talking the amount of money that people pay. You're talking the holistic experience that somebody gets of sports and culture and whatever.
Yeah.
So learning to do different things, while also, because sometimes, and I will take a bit of the neuro thing.
Yeah, we have to wrap it up, Kgomotso, so please be brief with your last word.
To balance themselves out. Thank you, sorry.
All right, thank you so much. We've run out of time. Thank you to both of you for that one. You can also participate in this one. Where do you stand? Do you stand with Hendrick or do you stand with Kgomotso? +27832886684. Thank you to our guest, Hendrick Makaneta, an education activist, and Kgomotso Moalosi, who is a neurodiversity activist. Do you think that schools overvalue certificates and undervalue talent? Let us know. It's 10:31 Central Africa time. Fikile Lingwati is back with our latest sports.
Sports on Channel